John Whitbeck joining us now, candidate for chair of the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors. John was also the former chair of the Republican Party of Virginia. And guess what? He's running against somebody that just voted herself a 62% pay raise. 62%! That's like more than half. That's like if you're making, that's like, let's say you're making $50,000, a 62% pay raise would be another like $35,000. I mean, who votes himself a pay? Can I vote myself a pay raise? 62%? John joining us now. John, what do you make of this when your opponent is voting herself a pay raise?
Well, John, first of all, good morning. Thanks for having me on. You know, I want to be really clear here. I oppose pay raises for our Board of Supervisors. In 2020, the chair, my opponent, will see a 62% pay raise. And get this, our teachers, our Loudoun County teachers, will only see a 2.2% pay raise. I think everybody ought to be concerned about that in Loudoun County and everywhere else.
So let me get this straight. I'm Loudoun Supervisor Chair Phyllis Randall. I'm running for re-election. I vote myself a 62% pay hike. Of course, I do nothing as supervisor. I mean, you do something, but it's not like it's a full-time job. So you get 62% pay raise, while the teachers of Loudoun County, who are toiling every day, underpaid and understaffed, and Virginia, one of the lowest paying states for teachers pay in the nation, they only saw a 2.2% increase. State troopers, who are underpaid, that everybody knows, only saw like a 2.1% increase. So state troopers get 2.1, teachers get 2.2, and Phyllis Randall gets 62%. How's that math work, John?
Well, it doesn't work, and it's something that everybody ought, like I said, ought to be concerned about. You know, here's another interesting thing. Prince William County has a larger population than Loudoun County, and the Loudoun County chair will make $30,000 more a year under Phyllis Randall's plan that she led the charge on than the Prince William chair. And they have more population than Prince William. This is an outrage. It's something that people should be very upset about, and I think it's going to be a major issue in November because we've seen, as we've talked about this, an incredible amount of outrage on the part of Loudoun citizens that have heard about this. A lot of people don't know about it. I knocked doors the other day in Sterling Park. Sterling Park is one of the areas that, you know, we feel might have, has been left behind in Loudoun County. And people had seen on Facebook us talking about this and said, you know what? I'm voting for you because your opponent voted herself a 62% pay raise to take effect in 2020. And it's really incredible to watch how outraged people are at this.
Let me ask you this, John. The supervisor, the chairman of the supervisors in Loudoun County. So with a $30,000 pay raise, what does that make your annual salary in 2020?
It's about $81,000 plus benefits.
Okay, so $81,000 plus benefits, which is, what does an average teacher make in Loudoun County?
Well, the starting salary is in the 40s, and then you can make up to 80s and 90s depending upon your experience. But the average is probably around $65,000.
Yeah, that's about what I'm thinking. Probably about 60, 65. So you're making $25,000, 20 more than a teacher, and a supervisor, chair of the Board of Supervisors. Like, is that like 9 to 5, 5 days a week? Is that a full-time job? What is that? They meet what? Once a
John,
week?
John, it's a good point. I mean, no, it's supposed to be a part-time job. Public service is supposed to be for people who have other experiences, people who raise families, raise children, who have full-time jobs, who dedicate their time to serve their community and then go back to their regular job. It was never meant to be a full-time job. And 6 out of the 9 supervisors that voted on this all have full-time jobs. And here's another thing, too. The vice chair of Loudoun County, Ralph Bona, called this pay raise obscene, ridiculous. I mean, this wasn't a consensus bipartisan package. Phyllis Randall led the charge to get herself a 62% pay raise, and it's really become a big issue in this campaign.
So
now let me add to that, John, if I could.
Good, John.
So Phyllis Randall supports a 62% pay raise to take effect in 2020 for the politicians on the board,
right,
including herself. In addition to that, in her first year in office, she voted to raise property taxes. Last year, she voted to guarantee that our Greenway would impose punishing tolls until 2056. So think about that. She votes to raise your taxes.
Right.
She votes to guarantee higher tolls on you and then ask the taxpayers to give her a 62% pay raise. It's just outrageous, and we need new leadership.
It's unbelievable. It's not outrageous. Talk about rats in a city. I mean, you got to be kidding me, right? I mean, all those three things that you just said, and she votes herself a pay raise, and it's not even a full-time job. How'd you like to have a part-time job making $81,000 plus benefits, right? John, you're a lawyer, right? You have a law firm. You have a law practice. You are not going to quit your law practice to go be chairman of the supervisors of Loudoun County, right? So you're going to continue to practice law, do your job. It's just not a full-time job. This is a part-time job. And so you get $81,000. You know what? I just got a text here from Chris Saxman. Let me just read you his text. State senators make $18,000. House members make $17,642. And you're going to tell me that the supervisor of Loudoun County is going to make $81,000 plus all benefits? I mean, you have got to be kidding me. And then to vote yourself a 62% raise while you got the highest tolls in the Mid-Atlantic region, and you just voted for a tax increase? I mean, that's not leadership, man. That is just ripping off the county's taxpayers. That's like stealing their money and ripping it off and putting it in your own pocket. Unbelievable. How would anybody vote for this chair, Phyllis Randall, is beyond me when she's voting for permanent higher tolls, permanent tax increases, and, oh, by the way, take some of that money and give me a 62% pay raise so I can make $81,000 for a show-up once-a-week part-time job. Hey, wouldn't we all like to have that job? Everybody should run for supervisor of Loudoun County. What a great job. $81,000 to meet once a week? Unbelievable. John, how do you beat her?
Well, we talk about the issues. At the local level, party doesn't matter. It really, people talk about policy. So when we knock on doors, we talk about how we're going to address school safety by putting a school resource officer in every school. We talk about what I call attainable housing. Loudoun County doesn't have a strategy for entry level to retirement in terms of its housing. And we have a tremendous inventory crisis to where people can't afford to live in Loudoun. And that feeds into our horrible traffic problem because about 70% of the cars on the road in Loudoun County are people driving through or driving to Loudoun to get to somewhere else because they can't afford to live here. If you're a teacher, a first responder, or a firefighter who's not making $81,000 a year plus benefits like Phyllis Randall would be next year, you can't afford to live in Loudoun. So you got to live in West Virginia, you got to live in Southern Maryland, you got to live in the Shenandoah Valley or something like that, and then commute into Loudoun. And so all those issues are very simple, can be summed up in one overriding principle that drives my campaign: quality of life. Everything that we do on the Board of Supervisors should be about improving Loudoun's quality of life. And when you talk about those issues that moms and dads deal with every day, those are the things that win elections in Northern Virginia.
It's quality of life is what you're running on. But also, I think that somebody that's voting themselves in this environment, a 62% pay raise for a once-a-week job is really stunning to me. I can't even believe that she would do that. And then think of the arrogance of it, right? She's up for re-election this year. And so it's one thing to vote for it after you just get reelected and you got 4 years. John, follow me here. I mean, it shouldn't be done anyway, but at least politically it's okay. I'll vote for it now. I've got 4 years. People will forget by that time. But when you vote yourself a 62% pay raise right in the middle of your reelection, you know what that's called? Arrogance. I mean, you're just arrogant. You just don't think that anybody's going to care what you do. You can do whatever you want. You're going to get reelected. You're in a county where, you fancy yourself a Democrat. It's a Democrat-running county. So you figure you can do whatever you want. That's arrogance. Am I right?
Well, and here's the other thing, too. She only won with 37% of the vote because the incumbent chair and the Republican nominee attacked each other to the end and split the vote. So the majority of Loudoun County residents voted for somebody else. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the things that we need to get back to is the true meaning of public service. Mm-hmm. And that is, it's not about partisanship. It's not about, what can I get for myself? It's about the families of Loudoun County and the issues that we're talking about: education, making sure these tolls get addressed finally, cutting property taxes. I mean, our assessments are going up every year and they're cutting the tax rate, but the assessments are going up. So we're all paying more. So we're not really getting tax cuts. School safety, all these things, attainable housing, all these things are what matter. And I am going to oppose pay raises for the Board of Supervisors. It should be a part-time job from small business owners like myself, people who have children in the schools like myself, and then you go back to your regular life and don't use government as a means of paying you for making a living. I just don't think that's right, and that's why I'm running against Phyllis Randall for chair.
John Whitbeck, if you get elected chairman of supervisors and this passes, are you going to roll it back?
Well, there's no way that they'll vote it back at this point, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I will. The way that I'll deal with it will be something along the lines of doing some of my personal part of it. In terms of I certainly would vote to roll it back if there were the votes there on the board. But can you imagine the other 8 supervisors suddenly waking up and no one's talking about this but me? You know what I mean? So I think
they're already getting the money.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm the only one talking about this because there were Republicans and Democrats that voted for this.
Right.
But what I'll probably do is something personally with mine to try to make a statement because I just don't anticipate anybody rolling it back. But I'll announce that later on in the campaign.
We're with John Whitbeck, former chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia. He is a candidate for chair of the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors. With us now, expressed this week his opposition to the outrageous 62% pay increase that supervisors in Loudoun County voted themselves to take effect next year. And, of course, Republicans and Democrats on the board voting for it because why not get another 30% raise and get up to $80,000 for a part-time, once-a-week job. That's a pretty good gig for a lot of people and an average of about $25,000 over the average of what a full-time school teacher makes in Loudoun County. And they work 5 days a week, and they're with your kids, but these supervisors convene once a week and sit in an office and meet with a lobbyist, and they get 62% pay raise and $81,000. This is outrageous, man. I tell you, John, but this is why people like you have got to get in and clean this up. Because, I mean, the fact that they could do that in this environment we're in, of all things. All right, give me the other big issue going on in Loudoun County. If John Whitbeck wins, other than stop the taxpayers from getting screwed, if John Whitbeck wins, what's another big change in Loudoun County we're going to see?
Well, here's the other thing too, John, that really sparked me to run for this. I drive sometimes when I go to court in Fairfax or Arlington, Alexandria, or I go down to D.C. Right now in Northern Virginia, if you start in Leesburg on the Greenway and you drive all the way down to D.C., you could pay upwards of $60 or $70 each way because tolls are so out of control. And Loudoun County can't control what happens on the toll road or 66, but it can control what happens on the Greenway. The Dulles Greenway is a privately owned road that for the last 10 years has been part of a sweetheart deal that was struck with then Senator Mark Herring and the Greenway to take away the ability of the State Corporation Commission to regulate the tolls on the road. That deal expires at the end of this year. And so the Greenway got John Bell, who's now running for state Senate, and a lot of people don't know this, the Democrat nominee for Senate in the 13th District, Dick Black's seat, was carrying a bill that would have guaranteed higher tolls on the Greenway until 2056. And then in 2056, the road reverts back to be owned by the state. Now, they took that to the Board of Supervisors and they said, we want you to do what's largely a symbolic vote to endorse the deal. And they got their headline. The local papers ran with a headline saying, we're going to have distance-based pricing and tolls are going to be controlled, blah, blah, blah. And there was a big, they made a big media thing out of it. So they bring the deal to the Board of Supervisors. They explain the deal to the Board of Supervisors. There are 9 supervisors in Loudoun County, 6 Republicans, 3 Democrats. 8 of them voted down this deal for the Greenway, and 1 voted for it, and that was my opponent, Phyllis Randall. I knew at that moment that something had to change, something at the top had to change, and that's why I decided later on to run for the seat.
All right, John Whitbeck, you got to keep fighting, man, because that county trending blue, everybody knows it. I think John Bell is going to win that seat, by the way, regardless of what you just said. I think he's the overwhelming favorite. But look, I think you got a shot, and this is a big issue for people. This should be a wake-up call for anybody out there in Loudoun County. If you want to vote for arrogant people like Phyllis Randall, that's going to vote herself a 62% pay raise right before election, along with permanent inclusion of the highest tolls in the Mid-Atlantic, and then a tax increase so she can make $81,000 for a once-a-week job. I mean, if that's what you want, re-elect her. If you want somebody that's going to actually care about the taxpayer and do the right thing, that's John Whitbeck. John, people want more info. Where do they go?
Go to johnwhitbeck.com. That's my website. And follow us on Twitter. My handle is @JohnWhitbeck. And like us on Facebook. We've got a petition going right now on Facebook that basically, is asking people to express their outrage on this pay raise. And it's just going crazy. I mean, we're getting a ton of folks angry about this, and it's really become a major issue in the campaign.
All right, Johnny. It's John Fredericks Radio Network.